Hello. So I've decided to throw together a quick bonus video because there's one more thing that you can do with VORs which is pretty cool and a bit more advanced than simply moving to and from one VOR station. So we're going to look at how we can navigate using two VOR stations. First, let me explain the route I'm going to fly to demonstrate this. So we're going to start south of Inverness and fly north to a town called Wick. Now we could fly in a straight line which takes us over the North Sea like this, but let's imagine that we want to play it safe and keep ourselves flying over land. So the route we'll take will be something like this. So to fly a route like this, we would need to do a couple of things. Once we have our basic route plotted out, we would need to work out the course or the direction over the ground. I'm using skyvector.com here to plan this route, and you can see it gives me the course and the distance. So for the first leg of this journey, from Inverness up to this turn, we would need to fly a course of 339 degrees for 23 nautical miles. Then for the second leg, we would need to fly 053 degrees for 52 nautical miles into Wick. So rather than trying to use dead reckoning, we can use the VORs at both airports. So another way to describe our flight plan is that we want to fly the 339 radial from Inverness and intercept the 053 bearing into Wick. In this example, you can see that I've roughly drawn the route here, and you can see that the lines intercept one another. We'll be able to see this intercept in the plane by using both VOR instruments together. And of course, before we go flying, we need to grab the VOR frequencies and the Morse code identifiers. So once you have those, let's go flying and we'll see what happens. Okay, so here we are up in the plane, and you can see that the weather outside isn't the best. So you can see we're up at about 5,000 feet just now. We're in the bottom of the clouds here. So this is more kind of realistic as for a situation where you'll be flying using instruments rather than flying VFR rules. So at the moment I'm just trying to follow the 360 bearing inbounds to Inverness. You can see I've got Inverness tuned in here on nav 1 and we're set to 360. We're about 3 nautical miles out now, so what I'm going to do is when we pass over the top of the VOR, I'm going to turn left to a heading of 339 to start off with, just to get ourselves moving in the general direction, and then once I've done that I will kind of reconfigure the VOR indicator to show a radial of 339, and then we'll kind of track that or follow that away from Inverness to start with. But at the moment I'm struggling to kind of keep ourselves on the 360 here. As I've said in my previous video, the closer you get to the VOR station, the more the needle will swing left and right. So just trying my best to keep the plane on there just now. See is moving left and right, and I'm trying to kind of find the best heading to hold that there. So you'll know that when you pass over a VOR station, because you'll see the little flag at the bottom here will change from a to flag, or it'll change from a to flag to a from flag. So at the moment it's pointing up, which shows that we're flying to the station. You see it goes kind of like a little warning sign there. There's actually a little kind of cone, a little dead zone directly above the station where you don't receive a signal. So that's why that happens, and then you see it's now a from flag. So I'm going to turn out to heading of 339, as I said, just so we can get ourselves going in the general direction away from Inverness to start off with. And then once the plane's moving there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to readjust the OBS indicator here. So I believe that's our radial of 339 degrees there. Now because we're so close to the station, it's showing that we're like way off, but as we get a bit further away the needle should start to come back to centre. What I'll do is I'll let us get a couple more miles away before I start to kind of turn to get ourselves back onto that radial there. But you can see it's set to 339 there, and we've got the from flag, so that means that we are flying away from Inverness on that radial. Well, not exactly at the moment, as of course, because we don't have the needle centered. But as I said, I'll just let the plane fly maybe about another mile, and then we'll kind of correct for that. And then once we're what we call established on that kind of path, that radial away from Inverness, then I'll talk about how to configure the second VOR indicator so that we can work out how to get to Wick from here. Right, okay, so about another mile away now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start bracketing and turning the plane to try and find, trying to get us exactly on that radial there. So turn left 20 degrees, so that should start bringing us back on course, hopefully. Yep, there we go. So you can see the needles now start to come back to centre. So you can see it's not really a nice day out. This is as I said, this is why you have instrument flying, is so you can conditions like this. You can see how if you try to fly, VFR up along the coast, you can see how difficult, especially at this altitude. So this is why we've learned how to use VORs. So you can see that we're coming back on now. We've got the needle coming back towards centre. So once the needle centres, I'll turn back to a heading of 339. And I'm not sure if I've got any wind set up at the moment, so I might have to do a little bit of bracketing to keep ourselves on that radial there. Okay, and while we're getting back onto that, what I'll do is I'll start talking about actually flying into Wick while that's coming back to centre. So to set up the second VOR, it's exactly the same as how we would set up the primary one, the primary indicator here. What we need to do is we need to tune the second radio, so that'll be this one down here, into the Wick frequency, make it the active frequency, and then hopefully you'll see a deflection on this indicator here. And then again, just to confirm that we're tuned into the correct station, we would need to listen out on our nav2 radio, listen out for the Wick Morse code identifier, and then once that's confirmed, then we can adjust the OBS on the second one here to our desired kind of path, which will be 053 degrees into Wick. And I'll go through those steps in a couple of seconds once we get ourselves back onto this radial away from Inverness here. Okay, so I think that's about it there. I need to keep an eye on that as well, because as I said, I'm not sure if we've got wind. Excuse me, I'm not sure if we've got wind set up on this flight. Might do actually. Yep, I do. So what I'll do is I'll turn to a heading of 330 degrees there, and hopefully that will kind of keep us along that radial. Yeah, I'll leave it there, and then we'll see what happens when we come back to it. So, flying into Wick. So the frequency for the Wick VOR is 113.6 megahertz. So I'm going to tune that into the nav2 radio here. The click spots on this one are a bit tricky. Okay, 113.6. So we've got that now, so I'll make it the active frequency. And you can see that the needle deflected there. So we've definitely got a signal on our sort of second navigation radio now. So, as before, we'll listen out for the Wick Morse codes and make sure that we're tuned into the correct station. think that was correct. I missed it. I'll wait until it sounds again just to make sure. Yep, excellent. So that's definitely Wick. So make that quiet. So now that we've tuned in and we've confirmed that we're tuned into Wick, what we'll do is now is we'll adjust the OBS to the path that we want. So we know it's 053. So we'll spin it around to 04 053. So that's roughly it there. The instruments in the default FSX Cessna are a little bit inaccurate. You tips enabled, so that it does, when you hover your mouse over the instrument, you the kind of specific numbers it's set to. I don't, because it tends to mess up my my recordings. Like, it kind of stutters, and sometimes when I'm speaking and the recording stutters, it doesn't pick up what I say. So I'm not going to do that in this instance. But you can see on the secondary VOR indicator here now that the needle's on the left, so that means that our flight path is on the left. And you can see the needle's moving back to center now, so that means that we are flying towards it and we should intercept it. And it looks like it's actually not going to take too much time before we do intercept it, which will be good. And also you can see that we've got the 2 flag here, the arrows pointing up here, so that shows that that is the bearing towards Wick. I actually picked this up a bit quicker than I expected we would. Excellent. Not going to complain about it. Yeah, so you can see I've had to correct slightly to the left to keep ourselves on the 339 radial away from Inverness. So we might have to do we might have to, you know, correct our sort of our heading when we turn to fly towards Wick. And look at it there, so you can see that yeah, the weather's not the best. Now, of course, you could have the nav autopilot. I've not got much experience using it with the second VOR, because I know that the nav autopilot would follow the 339 radial away from Inverness, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's possible to set it to the second nav radial. I think if you wanted to do that, what you'd have to do is you'd have to quickly retune the VOR1 indicator and the nav1 radio to use that into Wick, which you can do once you're established, but yeah, I'm not going to bother doing that in this video. So much like in the last video, once the needle is centered on the second one here, that's when we know that we're kind of back onto that intended flight path there. And then, so what I'm going to do is, just like when we passed over the Inverness VOR, I'm going to turn to a heading of I'll say 050, just to round off the number, just to get ourselves heading in the general direction. And then once we've kind of established ourselves in that direction, then I'll kind of, you know, if I need to back it to keep ourselves on it, I'll worry about that afterwards. And in theory, once we get 23 nautical miles away from Inverness, that's when this needle should center. So you can use the DME here as well as like a confirmation almost of where you are. I remember that it'll be 52 nautical miles into Wick, so the needle won't be moving drastically until we get a lot closer there. Okay, so I think that's us about centered now, so I'm going to turn the plane over to a heading of 050. As I said, it's just to kind of a nice round number, it's not going to be exact. And of course, if you are flying, you know, with wind, and you have to have like a correction angle in there, then like your heading won't exactly match your sort of radial there. Okay, so that's us turned over towards Wick now. So hopefully now this indicator, what we'd like to do is keep this indicator centered for as long as possible. Yeah, in fact what I will do is I will retune the VOR1 indicator. I'm not sure if this is official practice or if this is what is taught in the real world. As I said, as of in case no one's seen my disclaimer, I'm not a real pilot, so everything that I've kind of covered in these videos is just my own understanding of flying and my own study of flying. So yeah, so I'm not sure if switching between the VORs is done in the real world, but I fly simulators for fun, basically. I'm not a it's not my job, so yeah, so I'm going to do it here. So what we'll do is we'll tune in the VOR1 radio down to 133.6. Do that there. So you can see that the needle's swung across. That's because the OBS isn't set correctly. Just to make absolutely sure, it's just listening to the nav1 radio to make sure that we are tuned into Wick on that one as well. Yes, we are. Excellent. And then we'll adjust the OBS round to 053, so we've got 051, 2, 3, 4, yeah, so slightly off there. So just correct right slightly. And then now, because we've got that tuned into our VOR1 indicator, if we wanted to, we could set the nav autopilot here and follow that all the way in. Yeah, I'll do that just now. So set the nav there, and you can see that the autopilot is now taking over sort of directional control of the plane. So you can see it's turned us right slightly, just to kind of re-intercept the that radial, or that bearing, sorry, because I think what it's telling us just now is that we're slightly to the left of that bearing. So the plane's just turning right slightly just to kind of re-intercept that, and then as we come back onto that, I guess it'll turn left slightly for wind correction and all that. And you can see now the DME has also changed because we're now tuned into Wick. And I think okay, so you can change between radio 1 and radio 2 on the DME there. Never noticed that before. What numpty. Okay, so yeah, so now we've got Wick tuned into our DME, so you can see that we're now 46 nautical miles out, 116 knots ground speed. Unfortunately, this one doesn't tell us how long it's going to take, and I can't do the mental maths off the bat. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the video here, and then kind of I'm going to keep recording, but I'm going to cut the video here just to save you guys time, and then I'm going to come back. I guess it'll be sort of just after 15 minutes or so, and then we should be passing over Wick, and then hopefully what I'll do is I'll put up a screenshot of the flight analysis, and hopefully we should have covered that our actual flight path should have pretty much followed our planned flight path exactly. So I'm going to cut the video here, and I'll see you guys shortly. Okay, welcome back. So it's about 20 minutes after I left you there, so my estimate wasn't too far off. But yeah, the flight hasn't really had any major problems. We've been flying along at 5,000 feet normally. Interestingly enough, though, the nav autopilot did struggle to keep this 054 radio, 053 radio into Wick. It was kind of turning left and right trying to get itself established on that radial. So when we look at the flight analysis afterwards, the kind of the path up from the turn up to Wick might seem a little bit wavy. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, what I've also been doing is I tuned the second VOR radio back into Inverness, and I've just been keeping an eye on it to see what our radial is away from Inverness at this distance. So it looks like it's about 3034, and just to confirm, we've got the from indicator there, so that's our kind of radial away from Inverness. So now we know kind of roughly what radial we would need to fly if we wanted to fly direct from Inverness to Wick. So we're 1 nautical mile out away from Wick. Autopilot is taking care of us, so we should fly directly over the VOR station. And I'm not going to land at Wick or anything. All I'm doing is just demonstrating how to go from VOR to VOR basically. And you can see now that we've got the kind of warning indicator again there, so we're in that kind of dead zone directly above the VOR, which isn't anything to worry about. All you need to do is just keep flying and you'll sort of pop out the other side. And you can see now that we're flying now our bearing, now that we've gone past the station, our bearing has now become a radial of 053 away from Wick. And that's how you do it basically. So I'm going to end the video here, and then we'll have a quick look at the flight analysis so you can see exactly how the plane flew, and see if, fingers crossed, everything went as planned. So here's the flight analysis, and you can see that it was a successful flight. We flew our intended flight path and stayed over land the whole way. As I mentioned before, we had that little wobble flying inbound to Wick, but it didn't really affect the flight overall. Also, I just watched my recording back, and I sincerely apologise for all the stuttering. FSX and my recording software hate each other. But anyway, thanks very much for watching this far. In the next video, we'll talk about ILS approaches and landings, which will be good fun. Hope to see you there. Thanks again, and I'll catch you later.